people with long memories will remember that when the project was first conceived, the price was reckoned to be about 80 billion to build it to Manchester and Leeds. And now we're talking of more than that, just to build it between West London, not even Euston, and Birmingham. Welcome to Calling All Stations, the transport podcast. I'm Christian Wommer, an author and journalist who has covered transport for the past 30 years. In every episode, we try to keep you up to date with the most engaging news stories, policy developments and interviews in the transport world. And with me is my regular co-presenter, Mark Walker, who has spent decades looking at transport policies and legislation. So Mark, what are we covering today?
Hello Christian, and hello to our listeners. We have a fact-finding visit by you to the Silvertown Tunnel today, where you've experienced using the tunnel as a cyclist, which has a very interesting and unusual twist on it as an experience, as we will learn shortly. We'll also be talking about an article you've written in Rail magazine about figures, timings and costs related to the HS2 high-speed rail project. Also, we have seen in the last few weeks the publication of the paperback edition of Liberation Line, the book that was published last year, in which you described the achievements of the railway engineers who renewed the railways of Normandy and northern France after the Allied liberation began in June 1944. We've got an interesting twist on that as well. So an eclectic mix of stories for our listeners today.
Great, yes. Well, can we start with the Silvertown Tunnel? And for people who don't know, this is a £2 billion tunnel underneath the Thames that sort of runs parallel at slight angle to the Blackwall Tunnel. And the idea was that it would relieve the Blackwall Tunnel. Very controversial because, building road tunnels in 2025, not really kind of environmentally sustainable. There were lots of protests about it. The fact that cyclists can't use it, they can't cycle through it was an issue. But I think more importantly, was it worth spending $2 billion on it? Now it's a project, a PFI type project, so there is some risk taken by the builders. But those things are fairly opaque, and we don't quite know how many people they're going to need to ensure that it pays their way and that doesn't have to be subsidised by Transport for London. So it's a highly controversial project, and one of the things they did to appease the strong cycling lobby in London was to create a bus service through the tunnel which would take people and their bikes, and it's a special service that just runs from one stop north of the Thames to one stop south of the Thames. And so I recorded a bit of live audio to entertain you, and we'll discuss it a bit after that. So I've just come to the bus stop for this special cycle service that goes through the Silvertown Tunnel, because it's created because they wanted to show that cycles could use the tunnel, but they won't let people cycle through. So they've provided this service, which I'm told is free for the first year. I understand there's a contract for 3 years to run it for £2 million, which is rather a lot of money to spend on a special bus service, but it seems to run for most of the day, and at the moment I'm the only person on it. The bus stop is just off a roundabout, and it's quite a long ride from the main road between East London and the centre, And I've just seen the bus from the return bus, the other bus, come in, and of course there's no cyclists on that. And we're about to start off, and I'm still alone on this bus. I must say, it's not a route that I imagine many people would want to use, because it takes you round a lot of roundabouts. There is a cycle path, but it's not entirely a very satisfying place to cycle. Anyway, the doors have just closed and we're off. The bus runs every 12 minutes, and so I had to wait about 10 minutes because I just missed one. But I'm still the only person on it, and we're about to head into the tunnel. Well, it's a gleaming white tunnel, or grey concrete, and we're in the special bus lane. But I must say, despite the fact this is 6 o'clock on a weekday evening, Tuesday, there's barely any traffic in it at all. Just one other car kind of has passed us in the whole length of the tunnel, and maybe people are put off by the tolls or whatever. Maybe it's a post-holiday day, but nevertheless, certainly I doubt whether it's making a rate of return on an investment of, I think it's £2 billion.
So there we are, a fact-finding trip from the Silvertown Tunnel cycle bus service by our special correspondent, Christian Walmart. And how would you sum up that experience,
Well,
Christian?
I tell you what I was most surprised about was there was hardly anybody in the tunnel. I mentioned this, and here we are, evening rush hour. Okay, it was a Tuesday after a bank holiday, but there was just so little traffic, and it's a gleaming tunnel. It's engineering wise, it's a magnificent construction, but and there is of course a toll on it, but there's also now a toll on the Blackwall tunnel as well, so that's supposed to pay for this tunnel in the end. But anyway, and in terms of the cycling thing, I do think that this is a bit of greenwash, frankly. I mean, cyclists basically don't like the idea of getting on a bus and putting their bicycle on a bus. But what is odd, of course, is that they could also use the cable service, which is the cable car, which is almost parallel to this tunnel. And that is actually free for most of the day.
So you can take your bike on the cable car?
You can take your bike. Now, I was surprised to discover this, but you can. And so it almost runs from the same place on both sides of the river. So it does seem ludicrous spending £2 million on creating a bus service for 3 years. And, there was one person on the way back, and there was one person getting on when I got off on the way back. There was nobody on the way over or on the other bus I saw. So, this is going to take 20, 30 people a day, and it's going to cost a fortune.
And can we just be clear for the benefit of listeners, and indeed for me, is it forbidden to cycle through the tunnel? Do you have to use the bus? You
have to use the bus. And what's weird is actually there is a sort of pavement inside the tunnel, and you could kind of cycle through, although not many people, I think, would want to. But, you absolutely can't cycle through. It's banned. But also what was really weird, I had a conversation with the bus driver who told me that you could only use the bus with a bicycle. So nobody else could use the bus. So if you come along with a friend and you're wheeling your bike and you're chatting to your friend, the friend can't get on the bus.
That's amazing.
Completely ridiculous.
Okay. Well, there you are, right from the breaking news, investigative reporting end of Calling All Stations. And perhaps you might like to go back in a few months and see if it's changed.
I think I'll do that and see whether, dozens of people are using it. I somewhat suspect it won't be the case. It does go a bit from a nowhere bit of London to another nowhere bit of London. It's all a bit desolate.
Loyal listeners will know that Christian and I undertook 3 visits to HS2 construction sites. So for some of our international listeners, that's the construction sites for the High Speed 2 railway line that's being constructed currently between London and Birmingham in England. And we were enormously impressed with the ingenuity, the engineering skill, the wonderful expertise of the people building this railway. And indeed, only in the last few days there's been a major achievement in that the tunnel boring machine that's working its way towards Birmingham has broken through into a significant sort of landmark space on the way to completing the railway. But loyal listeners will also know that HS2 in the UK is a very controversial subject, in particular in relation to its cost and the time it's taken for the line to be constructed. And in fact, the HS2 railway is massively reduced in scope from the original intention, whereby it would have gone from London all the way to Manchester and Leeds. Now, as I said, it's just London to Birmingham. But Christian, there's been quite a lot of buzz around an article you've written this week in Rail magazine about new figures on costs and timing for HS2. And would you like to explain that to our listeners?
Absolutely. I mean, it's all pretty shocking stuff. One of the weird things about HS2 is there is no budget. Nobody actually has ever set out and said this is going to cost X billion pounds. Instead, there's a series of contracts, but these contracts are on a cost plus basis. So if the contractor says, "Oh, that's going to cost you, more than you think," or it's going to cost another £1 billion, there's nothing that anybody can do about it because of the way that the contracts have been framed. And so I've come across a bit of information from inside sources suggesting that Mark Wilde, the new chief executive, has been looking at the cost, likely cost, and when this will be finished, when the project will be finished. And he's come across, or come over with a remarkable figure, which is that to look at just the tunnels itself, the railway itself between what I've called Acton to Aston shuttle, which is in other words from Old Oak Common to Birmingham Curzon Street, will cost a staggering £81 billion at 2019 prices. And that's just to complete the work that is underway. And it doesn't include the trains or some of the signalling or any kind of other factors involved in it, which means that at today's prices, it's over 100 billion. And now people with long memories will remember that when the project was first conceived, the price was reckoned to be about 80 billion to build it to Manchester and Leeds. And now we're talking of more than that, just to build it between West London, not even Euston, and Birmingham, because that cost doesn't include the tunnelling through to Euston, which, by the way, I've now heard is not underway yet. The tunnel boring machines are there, but work hasn't started because there's no budget for it. And of course, Euston itself, there is no plan, no kind of clear plan as to what they're going to do with Euston itself, which is all another 5 or 6 billion, added to it. So the whole thing is out of control. Now, what is weird, I'm somebody who was opposed to this scheme all along because I thought it was, unnecessary. There could have been other ways of improving our railway infrastructure. But now that so much has been built, and as you say, Mark, we've been to the Colne Valley Viaduct, and we've been to the tunnels, we've been underneath Old Oak Common, we looked at Curzon Street from the kind of flyover above. I mean, we've seen that, all this kind of amazing engineering, and I just don't think you can abandon it. I just think you can't leave that. I mean, I was on the Chiltern line the other day, and it goes past the Colne Valley Viaduct kind of there, and it's all completed and done. And I really don't think you can just allow that. There's lots of reasons why the project was out of control, and that's for another time. But I think you have to complete it. But I don't think that you can actually spend that amount of money doing it. So I don't, Mark Wilde and the government are between a rock and a hard place. And I don't know how they're going to get over that. But what I can tell you is this, that keeping on dithering over this is just going to lead to other costs, more costs. I think they have to finish the section to Crewe. They have to speed the project up because, again, I'm told that at the earliest, we're now talking 2036 and quite possibly 2039 for it to be completed. I mean, this just is not acceptable. So I don't know how they're going to solve this, but I do think that my story suggests that really some urgency has to be to address this issue, has to be seen by the Department for Transport and indeed the Prime Minister. And just as a final note, of course, the Prime Minister's constituency is Holborn and St Pancras, where the terminus of the line is supposed to be. And Euston, at the moment, is like a bomb site. And it's been like a bomb site for 2 years. Nothing seems to happen. There's always a temporary kind of restriction on the road. It's a complete mess. Nothing is happening. And I think that might well be politically very damaging to the Prime Minister himself when it comes to an election. So really this needs to be addressed.
So Mark Wilde has been brought in by the government, the Department for Transport, to get a grip of all of this. And he has a strong track record in this area, doesn't he? Having got a grip of the Crossrail situation previously, which was also over budget and behind schedule.
Absolutely. He took over Crossrail at the end of 2018. And of course, I wrote a book on this called The Crossrail Story and followed it very closely. And essentially, they had promised that Crossrail would be finished on time, on budget, on December the 9th, 2018. And then in August 2018, they suddenly realised they're never going to meet this. So they sacked the chairman and the chief executive had already left. So they then took on Mark Wilde, and he spent a year sorting this out. I mean, for a year, of course, there was work continued, but he didn't set a kind of deadline or anything like that. He was very careful about not kind of having any hostages to fortune. And then he basically set the deadline that was met of kind of opening it by May 2022. So it also had COVID, of course, kind of interrupted it, but it ended up being 3 billion over budget. So instead of about 16 billion, it was 19 billion. So that's only about 25%. So it's not kind of anything like the proportion that HS2 is over budget. And it was 3 years late. But, Mark Wilde was the person who sorted this out. But I think that would have been, like reading a primer compared to Ulysses, frankly. I think that HS2 is going to be so much more complicated.
And then, of course, to complete that story, the Elizabeth line, which uses Crossrail, has turned into a fantastic success story.
Absolutely. Up to 700,000 people a day using it. They have a bit of problems with some of the services, sometimes get delayed, but it's such a high frequency, people don't really notice that. Of course, it runs on to the normal national rail tracks, both in the east and the west, and that's the cause of many of the delays. But it's a fantastic success story. And nobody would ever now say, oh, we spent 3 billion too much on this, we shouldn't have done it. Nobody would ever say that. So that might be true of HS2, but I think only if they go to Crewe. I think if they build the Acton to Aston shuttle, I think that it will be pretty useless. So they have to spend more money than the 100 billion, but I think they've got to find ways of kind of trimming the budget somehow.
Listeners will remember that in 2024, Christian published his book, Liberation Line, which was the story of how Allied railway engineers restored the railway network in Normandy and more widely in France following the landings on the 6th of June 1944 and the subsequent invasion, liberation of Western Europe. Now, the paperback edition of Liberation Line has just been published and is available from all good book retailers on both sides of the Atlantic. But interestingly, in this year of 2025, Christian's researcher has put a whole new twist on how you can experience Liberation Line. Would you like to explain, Christian?
Yes, this is quite extraordinary. My wonderful researcher, Nancy Cunningham, who's American and helped me enormously finding sources for the book, and we worked really well together for about a year, 18 months, kind of sending each other stuff. And she decided to put the first couple of chapters into this language model, which then produced what is really kind of a podcast. And this is all AI, right? This is kind of, artificial intelligence, as it were. And it came out with this amazing thing you're going to listen to now, of a 20-minute podcast that is a discussion between two bots, a woman bot and a male bot. And they have a chat, and I think you'll see that they sound fantastically human. They even say sometimes and kind of
like
hesitate, just like we do. Absolutely, Mark. And it's both astonishing and scary, because if this is what AI is doing, and remember, AI isn't that old yet, if it could do this, what else can it do? And what's amazing about it is that it's very listenable to. It's not just two computers being completely boring and kind of speaking in computer speak. It's actually sounds quite human, but we'll let you, dear listener, be the judge.
And this is dedicated to all those amazing people who did the amazing things in reconstructing the railways as we mark VE Day and VJ Day in 2025.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're digging into a story that, well, it's kind of stayed in the shadows of the big D-Day narratives.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at the absolutely vital role of railways and the railway workers in keeping the Allied advance moving in Northwest Europe after the landings.
It's crucial stuff.
You've shared some really fascinating material, and our mission today really is to figure out how restoring and running these railways actually powered the Allied push.
And maybe why we don't hear about it so much, right?
Exactly. Why has this huge part of the victory been sort of overlooked?
Well, it's striking. One of the sources you sent, the forward, actually calls it the last untold story of the campaign.
The last untold story after 80 years of books and films.
Yeah, exactly. It makes you wonder why the people running the trains, fixing the tracks, why they haven't gotten more recognition. It's pretty remarkable.
It really is. Okay, so let's get into it. Before anyone even landed on the beaches, there was this colossal job just getting everything ready.
Oh, absolutely.
Moving all the troops, all the gear from the US to the UK. Operation Overlords wasn't just the invasion itself, was it?
Not at all. It was fundamentally about logistics on both sides of the channel, really. The planning, even before D-Day, was heavily focused on how to move everything after the initial assault.
And that transatlantic part had its own name.
Right, Operation Bolero, a massive, complex plan. And it kept changing. Early on, they were talking about needing, get this, 1,000 locomotives shipped over.
1,000. Wow. That gives you a sense of the sheer scale they were anticipating.
It does, and just getting stuff across wasn't easy at first. The U-boats were a serious problem.
Right, I remember reading about that vulnerability, even before things really kicked off. It highlights how fragile logistics can be in wartime.
Yeah, it was precarious. Back in the summer of '42, U-boat losses were high. They were losing ships sometimes before they even properly left the U.S. coast.
That sounds unsustainable.
It absolutely was. But things shifted by early '43. Better anti-sub tactics, new tech like depth charges and radar, and the convoy system really started to work.
Okay, so they managed to get, what, over 1 million troops and tons of equipment across.
Mm-hmm. Vast quantities.
But then, even before D-Day, the British railway system itself was already creaking under the strain, right?
Oh, definitely. They were juggling normal wartime civilian traffic. Think about things like evacuating school children alongside this huge buildup of military trains.
Yeah, you don't often think about those layers. The existing infrastructure must have been stretched incredibly thin.
It really was. And that's where those American locomotives sent over under Lend-Lease became so important.
The austerity models.
That's them. Designed to be simple, rugged, hopefully tough enough for use on the continent eventually. It shows that wartime trade-off, function over finesse.
But weren't there issues with them? Something about exploding boilers? That doesn't sound very robust.
Well, yeah. The sources do mention they had their quirks. The lubrication was apparently pretty basic, and yes, there were some boiler explosions.
Ouch.
Understandably, they kept that fairly quiet, didn't want to cause panic. And their arrival was kept secret too initially. People noticed a new sounding whistle, but the censors clamped down on reporting details.
Right, keep it hush-hush. Now, another angle before the deception plan, Patton as the decoy up in the Pas de Calais.
Classic deception.
It seems like even the transport planners didn't initially believe he could advance as quickly as he eventually did.
That's a really interesting point. The logistics guys, they were understandably focused on the sheer difficulty of supplying the main invasion. They doubted Patton could move that fast.
They thought the supply lines just couldn't handle it.
Pretty much. And, well, they were kind of right, in a way. Later on, the Third Army did outrun its road transport.
Okay, so D-Day happens. The Allies get ashore. But the French railway network they needed, it was basically wrecked.
Yeah, deliberately so.
A two-pronged attack, wasn't it? Allied bombing from the air.
And sabotage by the French resistance on the ground. Le Plan Vert.
So by D-Day, the system is just fragments, short lines, collapsed bridges, bomb craters everywhere.
Exactly, highly fragmented, which, was the goal.
But this put the French railway workers, the Caminots, in an impossible position.
Absolute terrible dilemma.
They took pride in their railways, but they're under occupation. Cooperate, and you're helping the Germans. Sabotage, and you're hurting the Germans, but maybe also your own people's supplies.
It's that agonizing choice civilians face in occupied zones. And the reality of their resistance, it's complex. It wasn't always the simple, heroic story told later.
Or nuance.
Definitely. You had incredible bravery, no question. But also people making incredibly tough, dangerous choices day to day. Some, like this Huckendubler guy I mentioned, did small, discreet acts of sabotage, trying not to provoke massive reprisals.
Smart, in a way.
Then you had others, like a railway inspector who was secretly a resistance leader, showing just amazing defiance over a long period. But for many, just surviving under the Germans was the main thing.
Just getting by. Walking a tightrope every day.
A very dangerous one. And German management didn't help the network's resilience. Using inferior coal, closing smaller lines, it weakened the system further.
They treat it like part of the Reichsbahn, controlled from Berlin.
Pretty much. Their priorities weren't about maintaining the French system's flexibility, but about serving German military needs, which made it harder to recover from all the damage.
And then you had de Gaulle trying to coordinate the resistance, make sure their actions fit the bigger Allied picture.
Right, trying to harness that energy. The Grimbosk Bridge story is a good example. London wanting to direct sabotage for maximum strategic effect.
And the personal cost.
Yeah.
That story of Georges Grossclaude being tortured but not giving up his comrades.
It's harrowing. It just brings home the immense risks people took, far from the main battles. His sacrifice is just...
Yeah. So, back to the Allied bombing of the railways. Hugely controversial.
deeply controversial.
Churchill was worried sick about civilian deaths.
He reportedly was. But then you had Zuckerman's transportation plan arguing it was militarily essential.
To stop German reinforcements getting to Normandy quickly, especially that 15th Army in the Pas de Calais.
Exactly. That was the strategic rationale.
Yeah.
Cripple German mobility, stop a fast counterattack on the beachheads. But the cost in French lives was a massive ethical concern.
That brutal calculus of war.
It really is. Zuckerman argued stopping that 15th Army could be decisive for Overlord's success.
And they tried to improve accuracy with test runs and things like the Pathfinder system.
It did. Pathfinder used radar to help guide the bombers, trying to hit the marshalling yards and bridges more precisely, reduce the spillover into civilian areas.
Did it work?
It definitely improved things compared to earlier bombing. And later, as the Allies advanced, they did start scaling back bombing west of the Seine and north of the Loire, specifically to make reconstruction easier.
Okay, so the network's in ruins. Allies are pushing inland. Now King's the massive job, putting it all back together. How bad was the damage, really?
Well, interestingly, in some places, it wasn't quite as bad as planners had feared.
Really?
Yeah, which actually led to this odd situation where some of the railway equipment they shipped over in massive quantities just wasn't needed initially.
Huh. So the first priority was,
The Cherbourg-Leeson line, absolutely vital for supplying the port once it was taken. But fixing tracks near the front lines, like Lieutenant Colonel Harvey described, it was incredibly dangerous, constant shelling.
can you imagine, trying to lay track under artillery fire?
Mm.
And the Americans started landing the railway troops and gear straight onto Utah Beach using LSTs.
Yeah, almost immediately. A huge logistical feat in itself. Landing ship, tanks bringing railway engines ashore. It showed their determination to get things moving.
And they started having success pretty quickly.
Relatively, yes. The British got a military train running from Arromanches quite early on. The Americans were working hard around Leeson and Carentan, and they were resourceful using captured German locos when they could.
Making do with whatever was available. And then there was Colonel Bingham's roll-on, roll-off LSP system. That sounds like a game changer.
It really was, basically turning LSTs into railway ferries. They could unload wagons directly onto temporary tracks laid right on the beach.
Bypassing the wrecked ports entirely.
Exactly. It massively sped up getting heavy equipment ashore. Genius idea, kept secret from the Germans, of course. Bingham was apparently quite the innovator involved in the Super Jeep and designing hospital trains, too.
Hospital trains,
Yeah.
another vital but often forgotten piece.
Absolutely critical for evacuating wounded. Safer, smoother than road transport. They eventually had nearly 50 running in France. Saved countless lives.
Meanwhile, the British heading towards Cannon found heavy damage there. And Cherbourg itself, after the Germans finished demolishing it, sounds like a nightmare.
It was described as masterful demolition. The harbor blocked with sunken ships, breakwaters cratered, the railway yard just twisted metal. Rebuilding Cherbourg and its rail links was a monumental task.
And it wasn't just the physical damage they faced, right? Booby traps everywhere.
Plus, disagreements sometimes between Allied teams. The source mentions French engineers wanting to drive American locos, differences in practice.
Bank communication problems, telegraph lines down.
Constantly. Made coordinating everything incredibly difficult. Lots of improvisation needed.
Now, over in Brittany, things were a bit different. Faster German withdrawal, active resistance.
Yeah, progress was quicker there. But strategically, the Breton ports weren't as vital for the main push east towards Germany. Location, 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 right?
Right. Okay, so Patton's Third Army is racing across France
Moving incredibly fast.
and starts to outrun its supply lines. Road transport can't keep up.
Exactly. This is where the railways become absolutely undeniably critical, especially for fuel. Tanks drink a lot of fuel.
So road transport hits its limit. Air supply isn't really feasible yet.
Not on the scale needed, and they didn't have suitable airfields close enough yet, so the damaged, partially repaired railways were the only answer.
And the 728th Railroad Operating Battalion had the job of fixing fuel tank cars.
Crucial work. But the real drama was setting up that bypass route around the destroyed bridges at Pont-à-Bal and Laval.
Using obscure little rural lines. That sounds desperate.
It was an incredible feat. They had to upgrade these neglected tracks, rebuild small bridges, install signaling, basically make them usable for heavy military traffic in reportedly just 75 hours.
75 hours, that's insane.
Under normal conditions, unthinkable. Shows the pressure they were under, and the funneling yard nearby was being heavily bombed by the Germans, adding to the urgency.
Imagine the scene engineers frantically working while soldiers heading to the front watch them. Must have been a morale boost, seeing that connection.
Definitely a sense of shared purpose. The railway guys knew exactly who needed those tracks fixed. And apparently there were even moments like the 347th band playing for locals amidst it all.
Human moments in the middle of chaos.
Yeah.
But the first trains on that new line, it wasn't smooth sailing.
Not at all. Very slow going. They had to be super cautious about the track condition. Communication was still patchy. The first train to Saint-Hilaire supposedly took nearly a day to go 25 miles.
Wow, cautious is the word.
Absolutely. Risk of derailment was high.
And the story of the first train reaching Le Mans, the station master just astonished.
Yeah, it shows how vital but also how unexpected that rail link was. And the route they took via Lisson, Coutances, Avranches, totally roundabout, but it worked.
Adaptability again.
Yeah.
Making do.
That was the name of the game. Plus dealing with different types of locos, American oil burners, European coal burners, sometimes with crews not fully trained on them.
And double-heading trains on steep grades slows things down further.
Necessary, though, to shift the tonnage.
Mm-hmm.
And Patton himself was apparently breathing down their necks, demanding supplies now.
Le Mans becomes 3rd Army HQ, needs a bigger rail yard, fast.
Exactly. And they delivered 36 trains into Le Mans within a week. An amazing achievement.
Incredible effort. But the one-way traffic initially caused problems. Empty wagons piling up.
Yeah, that became the next bottleneck. Getting the empties back out was crucial for a sustainable flow. You need that two-way traffic.
So the advance rolls on eastward, lines get longer, new challenges pop up.
Always. Rebuilding major bridges like Pontauban was a huge job. The 332nd Engineers tackled that.
And they started easing off the bombing west of the Seine to help reconstruction.
Right, a recognition that they needed that infrastructure intact or at least repairable. But the sources still mention some Allied bombing raids continuing to be ineffective, hitting the wrong spots, causing more civilian casualties. Tragic waste.
Just awful. But they did get the Le Mans Chartres line fixed quickly.
Yes, allowing the first military train into Bru, the new 3rd Army HQ after Le Mans.
And you start seeing more collaboration between American and French railway workers, sharing rations, building some camaraderie.
Definitely. Despite language barriers, there was this growing sense of working together. Simple things like sharing food rations built goodwill, helped bridge the gaps.
But getting places like Compiègne fully operational after all the damage from bombing and sabotage,
Yeah,
that was still a massive headache.
huge task. And the sheer volume of supplies needed as they pushed towards Paris, it just overwhelmed the initial capacity of the rebuilt network.
Which leads to the Red Ball Express.
Exactly. The massive truck convoy system. A temporary fix, really. A kind of chaotic one-way routes, traffic jams, theft issues. It worked after a fashion, but it really highlighted how much more efficient rail is for bulk transport.
Interesting comparison. So Paris is liberated.
Yeah.
Huge symbolic win.
Massive morale boost.
But logistically, not an instant solution. The city network was too complex.
Right. The inner city lines were intricate, maybe a bit outdated. For moving freight east quickly, it was actually better to bypass Paris, using yards like Juvisy. Batignolles became a key railhead in Paris, but through traffic, often went around.
Makes sense. Avoid the bottleneck. And the advance continues, stretching those railway battalions even thinner.
Relentless pressure. Though Operation Dragoon, the landings in the south of France, did help.
A new supply route. And easier going down there.
Yeah, weaker German resistance. So that opened up another channel, took some pressure off the northern lines. Very welcome development.
Okay, moving east of the Seine, the picture gets a bit better. More robust network there to start with.
Generally, yes. The pre-war network was more developed, less damaged overall than in Normandy, but still major challenges.
Bridges, still a problem. And German demolitions.
Absolutely. Retreating Germans were systematic about blowing key bridges, leaving booby traps, these wrecking devices. Constant danger for the engineers.
And the supply lines are getting seriously long now, a real bottleneck.
Critical point. Even with the Red Ball Express improved, it wasn't enough. They needed fully working railways to sustain the push. Toul became a vital railhead in the east when other routes were blocked. Constant adaptation.
And Livingston's account of the railways around Paris sounds pretty chaotic.
Paints a vivid picture, doesn't it? The inner and outer rims of the network. But he also mentions the warm welcome the railway troops got from liberated French civilians.
Yeah, those moments of gratitude must have meant a lot.
Huge for morale, definitely, amidst all the danger and hard work.
Then you have the V-weapons, V1s, V2s hitting places like Liège and Antwerp.
A new kind of indiscriminate threat, targeting ports and supply lines, caused real disruption, casualties among dock and railway workers.
And Montgomery's focus on Market Garden, delaying the opening of Antwerp. That had big consequences for supplies, didn't it?
It's still debated, but yes, delaying Antwerp's full use definitely hampered Allied logistics at a critical time. It created a major bottleneck when they desperately needed supplies flowing.
And then, the Ardennes offensive. The Battle of the Bulge, a complete surprise.
Out of the blue for most, a major German counterattack aimed right at Allied supply lines.
Luftwaffe hitting railheads.
Yep, trying to cut off supplies. But the railway troops reacted incredibly quickly, rerouting trains, keeping things moving as much as possible. Places like Aulnoy Junction became crucial.
Even with things like Operation Grief, Germans in American uniforms trying to cause chaos.
Bizarre, wasn't it? But Patton typically remained confident, still relying heavily on rail.
But the fighting directly hit the railways. Lines lost, railwaymen caught in combat.
Yes, definitely. Some units found themselves right on the front line defending depots or tracks, Liège's yards were hit hard by V-rockets, too. It was incredibly dangerous work.
And they kept the supply depots close to the front, despite the risk.
Strategic gamble, but it paid off for the rapid response. The 332nd Engineers operating that fuel line near Liège under constant attack. Just heroic, dangerous work. And mines were a constant threat everywhere. Demining tracks took real skill.
Finally, the push into Germany itself. Capturing the Remagen Bridge intact. Huge moment.
Massive stroke of luck and bravery. Got them across the Rhine much faster than expected. Even without a proper heavy rail bridge there until April, that bridgehead was key.
They captured German rail infrastructure at Erpel, too.
Right, on the East Bank.
Oh.
Helped consolidate the crossing. Then came Operation Plunder, the main assault across the Rhine further north.
And they set up priority trains. Toot Sweet Express, Meatball Express.
Yeah, trying to get critical supplies and perishables moving fast shows the system getting more organized, but also the sheer volume needed.
But theft became a problem. Black markets.
Unfortunately, yes. With long supply lines through liberated, often chaotic territory, stuff went missing from trains. The army cracked down hard. It was seen as undermining the whole effort.
And as they moved into the Ruhr, Allied railroaders took over the German network, even working with German railwaymen.
Yeah, a complex phase. They had to get the German system running again, often damaged. Sometimes collaborating with German staff was the quickest way. And the railways were vital for moving huge numbers of displaced people, POWs. A massive task.
So looking back at all this,
Yeah.
it's just staggering how central the railways were, every single stage.
From Bolero right to the end, the arteries of the whole campaign.
And yet, like that forward said, it's largely untold. Why do you think that is?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe logistics just isn't as glamorous as frontline fighting. It's seen as background stuff, even though it's essential. But running a military railway like that was this immense cooperative effort. Thousands of people.
So key takeaway, railways and the railway workers.
Yeah.
Absolutely indispensable, full stop.
Couldn't have done it without them. The speed, they rebuilt things, the ingenuity, just incredible.
And the scale of it all.
Mind-boggling. The real aha moment here is realizing logistics wasn't just support. It was a primary driver of the victory. You know that U.S. Transportation Corps motto?
Nothing happens until something moves.
Exactly. This whole story proves it time and again.
And it's crucial we remember the people involved. Their hard work, their bravery, often in really dangerous conditions, they directly helped liberate Europe.
Their story absolutely deserves to be told and remembered properly.
Definitely. So a final thought for you, our listener, maybe chew on. In today's world, we rely on all sorts of transport, air, sea, complex global networks.
Very different landscape.
How might future conflicts be shaped by the vulnerabilities, the challenges of those logistical systems? Are there parallels to what the railwaymen faced back in WWII, trying to keep those vital lines open under fire?
Yeah. What are the enduring lessons about infrastructure, supply lines, and military success? Something definitely worth thinking about.
Quite extraordinary. You've listened to some of it.
I've listened to all of it.
You've listened to all of it.
Yes, it is amazing. The one thing that made me chuckle, the one giveaway was the mail bot at one point talks about, instead of World War II, it says WWII.
Oh, yeah. Yes, right.
That did not compute.
Yes, yes, I spotted that, and it's yes, it does show that they're not, but in a way that's all the more impressive.
It is.
Because I mean, he's got quite a gravelly, nice voice.
They're both sort of charming, aren't they?
Yeah, you want to meet them, really.
Yeah, it's really scary. Yeah. Here's Christian's final thought from the Departure Lounge.
Well, do we like the idea of having 18-year-old train drivers? Because that's what the government is proposing. They're so worried about the fact that around 30% of train drivers are going to reach retirement age in the next 2 years, and leave a gap for the operators to run services. And so they've decided to kind of change the rules to allow 18-year-olds rather than 20-year-olds to drive trains, or start training to drive trains. And this is to encourage school leavers to take this on straight away as a career, which of course, it should be seen as a kind of long potential career, because, train drivers do have a really pretty much guaranteed kind of work ahead of them for, as long as they want to do it. So, I think it's broadly a good idea. It's just as long as they ensure that there is all the rigorous training that the industry has always been party to and is part of the safety of the railways.
Calling All Stations, the Transport Podcast with Christian Walmart, is produced by Cogitamus Limited, a leading provider of public affairs consultancy services in the sector. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider giving us a 5-star rating with whichever platform you use. Do follow us on social media channels, including Blue Sky, Facebook, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Our handle on X is @AllStationsPod.